Welcome to the Quantanix YouTube channel. This is the Next Layer podcast, episode 14. Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take that stack of sources. You send us all your articles, research notes, and really dive in to pull out the key insights. Today, looking at the material you shared, we're exploring how AI, well, it isn't some far-off sci-fi thing anymore, is it?
Not at all. It's already here fundamentally reshaping, how we live, how we work, even how we create things.
Absolutely. So this deep dive is titled AI Reshapes Daily Life: Assistance, Art, Automation.
And what really jumps out from these sources is just how deeply AI is already woven into our daily routines.
Yeah.
Often in ways we don't even consciously notice.
Okay, let's try and unpack this then. Our mission today is to get specific about how AI is showing up in your life right now. We'll focus on three main areas the sources kept highlighting.
Right. Those being the AI assistants you talked to, this explosion in creativity driven by algorithms, and the automation happening behind the scenes, both at home and at work.
And you're right, the sources you provided definitely had some surprising facts, some really compelling insights about where things stand right now and where they're headed very soon in these areas.
Yeah, prepare to maybe see some familiar tech in a slightly different light.
Let's kick off with something most people have probably used: AI as your personal assistant.
Right, the obvious ones. Your virtual personal assistants, Alexa, Siri, Cortana, they seem to be everywhere.
They are. The sources confirm they're widespread.
Yeah.
But here's something interesting I picked up from the material. Despite all the tech advances in understanding language, complex commands.
Most interactions are still really basic.
Exactly. That's one of the key findings. Current use is heavily skewed towards, well, simple stuff. Checking facts, playing a song, asking about the weather.
So there's this big gap between what the tech could do and how we're actually using it day to day.
So is the problem the AI itself, according to the sources? Or is it us?
Well, the material suggests it's less about the text limits and more about user behavior. Trust issues come into play too, and just the fact that we tend to use them in a very sporadic, irregular way for complex things.
We just haven't really built complex habits around them yet.
Pretty much. We ask simple things because it's easy, but integrating them into deeper workflows takes more effort, maybe more trust.
That makes sense. But the sources also mentioned the pandemic playing a role here. How did that change things?
Yeah, that was a key point. The pandemic massively accelerated digital adoption, right? We all went online much more. And crucially, this period seems to have boosted overall user trust in digital tech, which in turn kind of raised expectations for what we want from these interactions.
So we got more comfortable relying on tech, and now we expect it to be smarter, more capable.
That's the takeaway from the sources, yeah. It's pushing developers to move beyond simple commands towards more genuinely conversational interfaces. Less like using a tool, more like having an actual assistant.
Okay, and that leads us nicely into the workplace, because digital assistants aren't just on our kitchen counters anymore.
Not by a long shot. The sources really emphasize how quickly they're integrating into professional life. There was one Gartner prediction mentioned saying that by 2021, which is already behind us, about 25% of the digital workforce would be interacting with these assistants daily.
A quarter of the digital workforce.
Yeah.
Daily. Wow. And how's that actually changing the way work gets done?
The research suggests it's helping us move away from, rigid office setups and fixed workflows. It's enabling more dynamic, interactive ways of working, collaborating, managing tasks through chat, messaging, email, all increasingly powered by AI behind the scenes. It's really reshaping productivity.
Okay, but this is usually where the job displacement conversation starts.
Yeah.
Did the sources tackle that fear?
They did, yeah, quite directly. The concerns are understandable, definitely present in the discussion, but the material paints a more nuanced picture. For instance, one McKinsey finding highlighted that over half of companies were already using AI in at least one business area.
And that widespread use wasn't causing mass unemployment?
Apparently not. The argument presented in the sources is more about enhancement. AI automates the mundane, the repetitive tasks.
Right, the stuff that frees up humans for.
What for the things humans do best? Creativity, critical thinking, complex problem solving. The sources suggest we're seeing a complementary relationship emerge: human skills plus AI efficiency.
Okay, so AI as a productivity partner. But then there's this other area where AI is stepping into territory we usually think of as uniquely human: creativity.
Yeah.
Specifically art.
Yes, generative art. a really fascinating section in the sources. We're talking about using complex algorithms, AI models, to create original, well, autonomous artistic works.
The sources name some key players. Midjourney, Night Cafe.
Leonardo AI was mentioned too, yeah. They're highlighted as premier tools, expected to be really influential by 2025, according to the material.
So how do they actually work? Magic.
Huh? Feels like it sometimes. But no, the sources explain they use deep machine learning models. These models are trained on absolutely massive data sets, images, styles spanning centuries of art history. You give them a text prompt, maybe adjust some settings, and the AI generates unique visuals. Could be abstract patterns, could be incredibly photorealistic images.
You just describe what you want, and it makes it. That does still sound a bit like the future.
It is the future, but it's happening right now.
Yeah.
And a key impact the sources point to is this idea of democratization.
Making art creation more accessible.
Exactly. Tools like these open up high-quality visual creation to complete beginners while also streamlining things for professionals. It lowers the barrier to entry significantly.
There was even a specific example in the sources about Leonardo AI's models, Phoenix and FLUX.1, something about real-time editing.
Yes. That was interesting. The ability to edit the image while it's being generated, that kind of immediate feedback loop makes it feel much more collaborative, less like just giving an order and waiting.
That real-time interaction definitely changes the dynamic. But this all brings up that fundamental question, doesn't it?
Right.
Can an algorithm actually create art?
And that's the core debate the sources dive into. You have tools like DALL-E, like ChatGPT for text, that are described as mimicking human creativity at, frankly, unprecedented levels. They can replicate styles, combine concepts, produce really complex results.
So they're good at mashing things together in new ways.
Essentially, yes. It relates to this concept mentioned in the material combinational creativity. AI excels at taking existing elements from its vast training data and recombining them in novel, often surprising ways.
Like a visual DJ, remixing everything it's ever seen.
That's not a bad way to think about it.
Yeah.
The sources also leave us hanging with some big questions.
Right.
Like, does this AI art have real emotional depth? Does it understand culture? Does it have personal intention behind it the way a human artist does? Or is it just incredibly sophisticated pattern matching and recombination based on all that data it learned from?
Those are deep questions. It's clearly a powerful tool for creation. But yeah, the definition of creator and maybe even art itself is being stretched here.
Definitely being challenged and expanded.
Okay, moving from the creative side to the more practical. AI is also becoming this invisible helper through automation.
Right. Automation in business was a big focus. The sources talked quite a bit about robotic process automation, or RPA.
RPA. How did the material define that?
It's described as software robots, not physical ones, but software that automate rules-based, repetitive tasks normally done by people. Think about things like capturing data from one system, entering it into another, clicking buttons, typing things out. The software mimics those human actions within computer applications.
And one key advantage the sources flagged was that RPA can often automate things without needing companies to rip out and replace their existing computer systems.
Exactly. That's a huge plus. It often works by interacting with the applications just like a human would through the user interface. So companies with older, complex legacy systems can still automate processes.
What about the benefits? What strategic advantages did the sources link to RPA?
Oh, quite a few compelling ones. Big cost savings, obviously. Optimizing how you use your human staff. Much higher accuracy, fewer errors than manual work. Also, better compliance, because the process is done the same way every time. Faster service delivery, and just greater consistency overall. It's all about efficiency and reliability.
Okay, that's business automation.
Yeah.
How does this kind of thing show up closer to home in our daily lives?
Well, that brings us to smart home automation, which the sources say is getting a major boost from AI.
So, beyond just asking my speaker to turn on the lights.
Way beyond that. AI is enabling what the sources call transformative living environments. Homes that don't just react, but actively adapt. They become smarter, more energy efficient, more secure, more responsive to your routines, often automatically.
How does the AI manage that adapting part?
The key strength, highlighted repeatedly in the sources, is its ability to learn. The AI observes the habits and routines of the people living there over time. It analyzes those patterns to optimize how the home systems run.
Can you give a concrete example from the material?
Yeah, the classic one they mention is the smart thermostat with AI. It learns your temperature preferences based on when you adjust it, the time of day, if anyone's home, even the weather outside. Then it starts predicting what you'll want and adjusts the heating or cooling automatically to keep you comfortable while using less energy. Often you don't even notice it happening.
Right, there's that invisible helper idea again.
Yeah.
Learning and optimizing quietly in the background.
Precisely. And this isn't just thermostats. The sources pointed to a 2020 Dagstool workshop that discussed machine intelligence applications spreading across culture, education, manufacturing. This learned automation is becoming really pervasive.
And the Internet of Things IoT is the backbone for all this home stuff, connecting all the devices.
Yes, the sources make that connection explicit. You have this whole ecosystem of interconnected devices, lights, security cameras, speakers, thermostats, appliances. AI acts as the brain, taking data from all these points, learning your patterns, and managing everything in a unified way. It starts to anticipate your needs.
So let's try and tie all these threads together. Looking back at this deep dive into the sources, what's the big picture on AI's impact on our daily lives?
I think it confirms what the material lays out pretty clearly. AI's integration, whether as assistants, creative partners, or through automation, isn't just incremental change. It represents a really fundamental transformation in how we interact with technology and, well, the world.
Right, we've seen AI assistants getting smarter, even if we haven't quite caught up in how we use them personally, but they're becoming real power tools at work.
We've touched on how AI art is both democratizing creativity and making us ask some really profound questions about what art is based on the debates and the sources.
And we looked at automation from RPA making businesses hyper-efficient to AI making our homes adaptive and intelligent. It's reshaping processes everywhere, often unseen.
And these aren't abstract shifts happening somewhere else. The sources emphasize this is directly impacting your daily routines, how you work, maybe even your creative outlets.
And there's definitely this dual nature that came through in the readings. On one hand, incredible opportunities for efficiency, new kinds of expression, convenience.
Absolutely, but balanced, as the material notes, against some real challenges. Things like potential job market shifts, becoming maybe too dependent on tech, and this crucial need to make sure we keep human agency front and center.
Which really raises a critical con for all of us living through this, doesn't it?
It does. The future isn't really about if AI integrates more. The sources make it clear that's a given. It's happening fast. The vital question is how? How do we, collectively and individually, ensure it augments our capabilities, reflects our values, enhances our lives, instead of replacing or diminishing aspects of being human?
And that seems to require thoughtful engagement, conscious choices from us, from you, the user, about how we interact with and control these powerful tools. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the sources you shared. We hope this has offered a clearer, perhaps more nuanced view of how AI is already reshaping your daily life. Remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives on the Next Layer podcast at the Quantanix YouTube channel.